broadcasting live from an undisclosed location. This is the TCMMA podcast with your host, Chris Cross.
Whoa!
Dana White privilege.
Let's go, baby! Let's go! Let's go! Let's go! Let's go, baby!
Dana White privilege. Privilege. Privilege.
What up, what up? This your boy Chris Cross checking in. This is the TCMMA podcast, and UFC 302 is on the horizon, and we got some of those predictions for you today. But let's begin first with the early prelims. I mean, this thing's going to kick off. We got a late arrival in Mitch Raposo taking on Lima, who's undefeated, Brazilian 8-0. That's going to be an interesting fight. I mean, Raposo is good, but so is Lima. Both guys are almost perfect, 17-1 combined. Doesn't get any better than that. Then you got Eileen Perez, who comes in at 9-2, taking on a woman we can say is a veteran now, right? And Jocelyn Edwards, she's 13-5. You also got Mickey Gall taking on Hafez. Gall 7-5, Hafez 8-4. Hafez is a heavy favorite. So that's the early prelims, and we're going to work our way up this card throughout the show and give you multiple detailed predictions. Also, some major topics coming out today, featuring some of the pay-per-view events coming up, like UFC 304's Bilal Muhammad says he's not chasing love from common fans. 90% of them drink too much. And I'm paraphrasing. Yep. He says the UFC fans kind of stink compared to WWE fans. So we'll get into that in his big fight against Leon Edwards. And you're going to be surprised who he's training with right now. It's crazy. Also, remember in the last podcast we told you Khalil Roundtree is out against Jamal Hill. And that now involves Ian Gary and MVP Michael Venom Page, right? Those two could be fighting as well. But now you get a latecomer to this card in Carlos Ulberg. That'll be at UFC 303. So that's still a month and some change away. So plenty of time for him to get prepared. He's coming off like the 14-second KO in his last fight. So Carlos Ulberg is looking really good. And this is not the fight necessarily that Jamal Hill wants, but it's one he's going to get. On a side note, you also got UFC Hall of Famer Uriah Faber planning Game Changer MMA project as he calls on fellow fighters for help. So we'll explain that in detail in just a moment. Also, the UFC is merging with WWE to create TKO Live Events Strategy Team. So they're basically coming together. I don't know the full details of this. This is going to have to do with the cities that they're going to be going to, working with those cities to maximize their profits. I don't know if this has anything to do with the production of the events. That wasn't really told to us, but we'll get more into that and why that's important. And maybe I need to get more into WWE like I was when I was young. I mean, the fights are predetermined, right? Right? I know some of y'all get upset with that, but the fights are predetermined. So can we really do predictions on them and follow the fights? We still can, but more to come on that as these two companies continue to merge together. The WWE is even going to put on an event at the Apex Center here in the near future. Also, speaking of UFC 302, as we work our way up to those predictions, DP, the Diamond, Dustin Poirier makes a bold prediction for Islam Makhachev fight at UFC 302. And also, you got Conor McGregor nearly breaking self-imposed drinking ban with UFC return looming. And if any of you care about this story, I will tell you now, he didn't do anything wrong. But he was inches away from taking a drink. He was smelling it, but he didn't take a drink. So good for him. So these stories coming throughout the podcast. But let's begin with one important one right now before we get to the first prediction today between Randy Brown and Alessio Zaleski dos Santos. That'll be the first fight in the main card. We'll get to that in just a moment. Bilal Muhammad says he's not chasing love from common fans. 90% of them drink too much. And UFC fans stink compared to WWE fans. according to number 1 seeded welterweight contender Belal Muhammad. So that's what he's saying. Agree or disagree, it is what it is. I've been to a WWE event recently, and it was a spectacular event. It was a great time. Everybody's pumped up, but when you get into WWE, that's more, you're going to have a lot of the old heads that are diehard fans, but you're going to bring out a lot of the kids and that energy and that happy-go-lucky feeling at a WWE event. And yes, when you get into the UFC and this is real combat, guys are KOing each other, they're finishing each other, they're going 15 minutes or 25 minutes battling back and forth, and it's not scripted, anything can happen. Yeah, I mean, you're going to get more drinking and things like that. So Belal Muhammad is not necessarily wrong, but he is really going in on the UFC fans. Make no mistake about it. So, when you also look at Belal Muhammad, he's training with Khabib ahead of this fight. That has to mean something. He says this was literally the biggest mistake of his life. He tells MMA Fighting of Leon Edwards making him wait for this title fight. It gives him a chance to train with Khabib and even get better and better and better. And you're going to need to be with the ground game potential of Leon Edwards if he chooses to use it. He says dragging this fight on as long as possible because I'm getting better every single day. And I believe that. I'm not a guy that stays out of the gym. Even when I train for the backup role, I'll show you text messages where I sent my boys, like, could we do film study? ? Right? Like, in other words, he's taking this fight serious. He takes every fight serious. And the fact he's training with Khabib has to mean something. And I think Khabib and company would like to see Leon Edwards fall. That could potentially be a better matchup for Islam Makhachev, whom he's probably doing some workouts with. If I had to guess, don't know that for sure. But I would lean in that direction, that he is training with Islam as well as Khabib. I don't know that for a fact again, but I would assume that that's what's going on because all those things go hand in hand. Now, as we get into UFC 302, and we'll bounce back and forth between that and the news as we work our way up to Islam Makhachev and Dustin Poirier, let's get into our first fight prediction. It's going to be between Randy Rude Boy Brown and Alessio Zaleski dos Santos. Incredible fight here. Let's get into it right now. In the welterweight division in UFC 302, you got Randy Rude Boy Brown coming in at 18-5, taking on Zaleski dos Santos, Brazilian, who comes in at 24-7. Now, Randy Brown's going to be 4 inches taller at 6'3". He's 33. Santos 37. He's getting up there. Rude Boy, Randy Brown's got a 5-inch reach advantage. They both stand right-handed. They're both right in the middle of the fours here in significant strikes per minute, both 4.5 significant strikes per minute on average, so pretty even there. Both guys less than 1 takedown per round. So you're going to see a stand-up striking affair, but it's not going to be as fast-paced as people would like. But it'll be okay. But we're not talking 5, 6, and 7 strikes per minute, just 4. So it's going to be a slow-paced fight. Randy Brown, 74% takedown defense, coming off the win over Muslim Salikov KO. He needed that one. And Wellington Turman decision. Because when he wins by decision a lot of times. It needed that finish. Dos Santos, 68% takedown defense. Coming off the loss against Renat Fakhretdinov, but fought well. Lost by majority decision. Trailed 87-75 in significant strikes. So that was a good fight for him. Before that, he beat Abu Bakr Nurmagomedov by split decision and Benoit Saint Denis, by decision. That was back in 2021. So not a lot of fights as of late. And that could be a big difference in this fight. Randy Brown is much more active. Dos Santos is a tough customer, man. This guy is tough to go against. But, I'm a Randy Brown fan. I like what he does. I think he can get the win here. He's got the reach advantage. Dos Santos is getting older. He's going to slow down just a little bit every time we see him, but it's still a major problem. This is why this fight's a near toss-up, but Randy Brown is a slight favorite in this thing. And in my opinion, he does hold that up and get the win on significant strikes, takedown defense, maybe a takedown or 2 in this fight, but he'll win on the feet as well to move to 19-5, welterweight division, UFC 302. Yeah, so I mean, you got an interesting fight between these two that could really go either way. They're both incredible athletes at the top of their game. This is why they're in the main card of a pay-per-view event. When you look at the odds, Randy Brown's a slight favorite, and that's why he should get the victory here. But when you're facing off against a Brazilian, anything can happen. I mean, anything can happen. They can catch you with a big punch. If it's not going well on the feet, they could shoot in for takedowns. If you go in for the takedown of your own and happen to land one, now you're on the ground with an athlete that could potentially submit you. And it seems like every fight, or at worst, every other fight, is featuring a Brazilian fighter. They're loaded, and they're all skillful. And, you got to take them seriously. Now, the only thing going for Randy Brown here is that Zaleski dos Santos is 37. So hopefully for his sake, he's slowing down just a little bit, just enough to make you feel good about this fight. Now, the next fight I really love, and we'll jump back into the news in a minute, but the next fight I really love because you have a guy in Jailton Almeida who was literally rising to stardom. I mean, this guy was on the rise, make no mistake about it. And he was dominating Curtis Blades, one of the better heavyweight fighters, who's now fighting for the interim belt against Tom Aspinall because he beat Jailton Almeida. And all that happened is after 9 takedowns in a 5 or 6 minute period, Curtis Blades had enough and just went for it. It's like, I'm either going to spend 4 minutes on my back defending myself and wear myself out, or I'm just going to KO the guy now. So he starts landing elbows and hammers, and next thing you know, Jailton Almeida's finished. It's absolutely crazy. But now he's going to bounce back against a very good fighter in Alexander Romanov. And this fight is going to tell us a lot about Jailton Almeida and his ability to bounce back. So let's get this prediction in and preview right now. In the heavyweight division at UFC 302, Jailton Almeida is back. The Brazilian is 20-3, coming off the loss to Curtis Blades. He's taking on Alexander Romanov, who comes in at 17-2. So this is a big-time heavyweight fight, and Almeida's got a lot to prove. He's 1 inch taller at 6'3". He's 32, Romanov 33, both guys in the middle of the prime. Almeida 4-inch reach advantage, 79-75. He stands right-handed, Romanov stands southpaw or left-handed. Now, Romanov is the better striker, 4.1 significant strikes per minute to 2.5 for Almeida, but that's not Almeida's game. This guy lands like 7 takedowns over the course of 3 rounds, or simply put, more than 2 takedowns per round. It's ridiculous. Romanov's no stranger to the ground, though. He lands more than 1 takedown per round himself. Now, Almeida, 75% takedown defense, coming off the loss to Curtis Blades. He was taking him down at will, right? He had 9 takedowns in under 6 minutes. But finally, Curtis Blades had enough and started dropping elbows, and that ended the fight pretty quickly. So, big setback for Almeida against a big opponent. Before that, he beat Derek Lewis, Rosenstrike, and Shamil Abdurakhimov in every which way. Beat Lewis by decision, which is odd. Should have finished that fight. Sub Rosenstrike and KO'd Abdurakhimov. Now, Romanov, a.k.a. King Kong, is no joke. Again, he's 17-2, but the problem here is 20% takedown defense. Coming off the win over Blagoy Ivanov by decision, but he did lose to Volkov and Marcin Tybura. And I'm here to tell you, Jailton Almeida is much better than both of those guys. He's going to land takedowns at will. We'll see how Romanov can deal with the ground game of Almeida, which seems to just dominate opponents. It was dominating Curtis Blades until he just got the finish, really. So Almeida will take down Romanov at will. He should not be nervous to go back in and land takedowns. It's going to get him a win in a lot of fights, and he's got to get better against top contenders, top 5. But he'll win this one. The Brazilian is much better here on the ground. Will likely get a submission to move to 21-3. I look for this to happen late in the first round, early second, in my opinion, to get the win. Heavyweight division, UFC 302. Yeah, I mean, Jailton Almeida cannot afford to lose his fight, right? I mean, he can't lose 2 in a row, or else he'll no longer be a threat to the division. He'll no longer be taken seriously. He's still going to be able to continue to take heavyweights down at will. And that's why I feel like he's going to win this fight. I mean, I know Romanov is a serious contender. The guy's got way more wins than losses, hardly any losses at all. But he's not on the level of Jailton Almeida, so that makes me feel comfortable with that pick, and easy for that matter. Now, as we continue into some UFC news, Carlos Ulberg is going to step in against Jamal Hill at UFC 303. And to me, this is a very interesting situation because Carlos Ulberg is coming off like a 14-second, roughly, could be less, could be a little more, but right around 14 seconds in terms of the KO. When I watched it live, it seemed to me like it was more like 11 or 12 seconds, but officially 14. So, you know, this is going to be an interesting striking affair, back-to-back, really, for Jamal Hill. And, you know, he's liable to get KO'd again if he's not careful with Carlos Ulberg. So this is even better than Khalil Roundtree, in my opinion, because Carlos Ulberg has a big upside. As time goes on, he's only getting better. But credit Jamal Hill for taking this fight. No doubt about it. He knows he's got to fight. And for him, if you're going to be champ again, it really doesn't matter who that fight is against. That's the bottom line, is you got to take fights, and you got to win those fights. Now, UFC Hall of Famer Uriah Faber planning game-changer MMA project as he calls on fellow fighters for help. He says, I want a place to get the sport where it needs to be. Like football, baseball, basketball, soccer, you know? Go through like the little leagues, Pop Warner, and then you get into middle school, high school, right? College, and then, you know, then there's a draft and all these type of things. And the UFC's trying to kind of set that up with the Contender Series, right? But there's not really a pipeline into the UFC right now. The UFC's got to kind of find fighters and guess a little bit because all these guys are fighting in different promotions and you really don't know what to expect. You might think a guy's good and he comes into Contender Series and gets whooped. I mean, you really don't know what to expect. And I think Uriah Faber's on the right, in the right mindset with this, because this is what the UFC and MMA as a whole needs. And it's not going to be simple, but at least someone is looking forward. He's a forward-thinking guy, and he's like the perfect guy to do this, man. The California kid, let's get it. I'm all for it. Make the sport better at all costs. Now, we also told you earlier that the UFC is merging with WWE to create TKO Live Event Strategy Team. Now, TKO is like more or less the company that both the UFC and WWE are under now, right? And rather than have two separate teams trying to do this stuff, why not converge it into one and let them strategize and plan for all these cities and events that they're going to be going to? Now, they're going to have to work closely with Dana White, right? Because Dana White has his hand in the pie in terms of where they're going, setting up future schedules, contracts, things of that nature. And it's not like you can just shove Dana White aside. That's going to happen one day. Like, I don't know if he'll ever be shoved aside, but he'll end up leaving UFC at some point, right? I mean, we all are living a finite life. Like, it's not infinite. It's going to come to an end. At some point, Dana White can't do it forever, but right now he's doing a heck of a job. And it's like, you just fear the day that he leaves, because I do not want the sport to be like the NFL and the no fun league that it became, and then went back to the fun because they were losing fans and things. You know, we don't want all that. This is the fight game, right? So I'm always nervous when you're merging with, like, in this case, WWE or anything else, because who knows how it's going to play out. I mean, we just don't know how it's going to play out. So it definitely makes you nervous. But at the same time, from a company standpoint, a corporation, this makes sense, and it's going to cut costs as well. So you got to do it. Now, jumping back into UFC 302, we're approaching the big three, the final three fights. And then the next one is a guy that I absolutely love. But as you've seen the last couple of weeks, if I pick the guy that I like, doesn't mean they're always going to win. In fact, we had a very bad night a few weeks ago where we went like 5-7 because it was like 5 fights were guys I like and 4 of them all lost. So, you know, but in this one, it's Kevin Holland. I like Kevin Holland. He's had setbacks, right? Fought in the middleweight, then went down to welterweight, won some, then started losing. Now he's going back up to middleweight to take on McCall Alexichuk. So let's get into that prediction right now. In the middleweight division at UFC 302, you got Kevin Holland coming in at 25-11, taking on McCall Alexichuk, who comes in at 19-7. So Kevin Holland is returning to the middleweight division. It's been a while. More on that in a moment. He's 3 inches taller than Alexichuk at 6'3". He's 31. McCall, 29. Kevin Holland's got a 7-inch reach. That's considerable. He fights right-handed. Alexichuk fights left-handed. In terms of activity, that leans Alexichuk over 5 significant strikes per minute to 4.2 for Kevin Holland, but both guys pretty good strikers to say the least. They both land less than 1 takedown in an average 3-round fight. So don't expect many takedowns in this one, which is fine. That's what we want. We want a strike and a fair. Kevin Holland, 54% takedown defense. That's been a problem in his career. But in his last fight against Venom Page, he did land 2 takedowns, but only 29 significant strikes. Venom Page, 41. So he got the win. He also lost to JDM, Jack Della Maddalena, but fought well, losing by split decision. Controversial fight as he led 127-105 in significant strikes. Before that, he beat Michael Chiesa and Santiago Ponzinibbio. So he's 2-2 in his last 4, but lost a little bit of momentum along the way. Alexichuk, even worse, takedown defense at 48%. Coming off the loss to Mikel Pereira by submission. Beat Chidi Njokuani by KO and lost to Kyle Barajo by submission. Beat Cody Brundage by KO. This is a very tricky fight. Very, very tricky fight. Because I'm a big Kevin Holland fan, but the middleweight division is much tougher. These guys are bigger. But this is a fight that Kevin Holland has to win, right? I mean, this is a fight that he has to win. I just can't see him losing 3 in a row. It is concerning that he's going back up to middleweight, but he's got to do what he's got to do. Maybe he'll feel stronger there without the need to have to cut weight. We'll see. When he moves up in a division, that will be a problem, but right now, he's not doing that. He's taking on a guy that's at his level roughly, so that means I like Kevin Holland to get the job done. I don't like the numbers. I don't know if Kevin Holland lands a takedown in this fight. Alexichuk's a little bit better of a striker, but Kevin Holland has a way of changing his opponent's game plan from the very beginning. He causes problems for opponents, and he's only getting better at 31 years old. I like him to win this fight by decision on significant strikes, oddly enough, to move to 26-11 here in the middleweight division, in my opinion, at UFC 302. Yeah, so big time fight there. And, you know, when you get into the odds of this fight, it's no question that Kevin Holland is the favorite, nearly 2.5 to 1. I mean, he's a considerable favorite here, and he's got to pull this thing off. You know, if he can't win in the welterweight division against some of the top fighters, and he goes back to middleweight and loses to Alexichuk, who is not one of the top fighters, very good fighter, not one of the top fighters, then he's got problems. He's got big problems. Now, let's get into the co-main event. This is not the best card, but it is a good card, especially when you look at the co-main event, right? Middleweight showdown, right? Sean Strickland versus Paulo Costa, and Sean Strickland's got to win this fight to get a rematch against Duplessis or Adesanya. I don't think to him it really matters who wins. And he beat Adesanya soundly and lost to Duplessis by split decision. So he should probably already have a rematch, but he's got to beat Paulo Costa first. And Paulo Costa's hungry right now. This is not going to be an easy fight. But let's get into that prediction right now. In the middleweight division, your co-main event at UFC 302. You got a big one here. Sean Strickland, former middleweight champion, comes in at 28-6. Takes on Paulo Costa, who comes in at 14-3, a guy we haven't seen in a while. This is American versus Brazilian. Both guys stand 6'1". Both guys 33 years old. Strickland, 4-inch reach advantage. Both guys stand right-handed. Both guys right around 6 significant strikes per minute. And both guys less than 1 takedown per 3 rounds. So, very similar, to say the least, between these two in terms of everything: reach, stance, activity, significant strikes per minute, takedown average, all that. Now, in terms of takedown defense, very close as well. Both guys right around 80%. I mean, it's crazy. They're even in every category. But is it really an even fight? Well, let's see. Sean Strickland has been very active over the last 2 to 3 years. He lost the belt to Dricus du Plessis by split decision. But he outstruck him 173 to 137. He gave up 6 takedowns. That was the problem. So takedown defense, still strong at 77%, but not so strong in that fight. Before that, he beat Adesanya by decision, Abu Magomedov, second round KO, and Nazaruddin Amavov by decision. Prior to that, though, he lost the back-to-back fights to Jared Cannonier and Alex Pereira. So certainly fighting better as of late. Even the loss against du Plessis, he fought well. Now, Paulo Costa's coming off the loss to Robert Whittaker back in February. That was by unanimous decision. I forgot about that fight. Before that, he beat Luke Rockhold 73 to 51 in significant strikes, 2 takedowns to 1, won that by decision. Before that, he lost to Marvin Vettori and Israel Adesanya. So when you look at his 14-3 record, 3 of those losses came in the last 4 fights. He was at one point 13-0. And it has just been derailed as of late. This is going to be an interesting fight because you never know what can happen here. I mean, both guys are pure strikers. Likely someone's going down, or we're just getting ready to see a great battle. But I like Sean Strickland to win this one. I think he's been more active lately. I think Paulo Costa will be better in this fight. It will be a very close fight. Unless someone gets dropped, which is what I think is actually going to happen. So it's either going to be a close fight or someone's getting dropped like in the second or third round. And if I got to bank on that, I think Sean Strickland is the one that's going to drop his opponent here to move to 29-6. Sheer striking affair, both guys with great takedown defense. Let's see if Paulo Costa will see what Dricus du Plessis did to Strickland with the 6 takedowns and try to go for that. But regardless, I think Strickland's going to be better in that department. Move to 29-6, get the finish in the second or third round. Middleweight division, co-main event, UFC 302. Yeah, and as a Hamza Chimaev fan, and I hate to tell you that Sean Strickland's going to win, but that's exactly what's going to happen. And he's likely to get the rematch. Hamza will likely beat Robert Whittaker and will still be on the outside looking in because you still have Adesanya, you still have Dricus, you still have Sean Strickland, right? So he'll still be like the 4th guy, even with a win over Robert Whittaker. Now, if Hamza wins and Paulo Costa wins, then either Hamza gets a direct fight for the title or he's got to fight Paulo Costa, which was a fight that should have happened anyway that never happened. So a lot of possibilities there. As we get ready for the big main event, Islam Makhachev, champion, versus Dustin Poirier, who's getting his 3rd opportunity, we got to discuss Conor McGregor, right? We're talking about lightweight division. He's fighting Michael Chandler. It's not a lightweight fight, but it is what it is. Conor McGregor put himself on a self-imposed drinking ban. No drinking. He's trying to cleanse the body. He's trying to take the fight serious and do what he's got to do. And he came very close to taking a sip. I don't know why this is breaking news, but it is. You know why? Because anything Conor McGregor does is breaking news. Right? I mean, anything this guy does is breaking news. So, I guess the only thing you can say is he didn't take a sip. So good for him, right? He's doing the right thing. Maybe this was a staged event. So he could say, hey, look, I'm taking the fight serious. But I don't think he's got anything to prove to anybody, right? He shouldn't even be trying to prove anything to anybody. He should be really just focusing on the fight. That's the bottom line. Now, UFC 302, and the reason why we're here is the lightweight title, the best division in the UFC, bar none, okay, has a title on the line. Islam Makhachev versus Dustin Poirier. And Dustin Poirier coming out this week, either today or yesterday, saying, hey, I'm going to KO Islam Makhachev. And there's no reason to doubt Dustin Poirier. 3rd time's the charm. This is the opportunity, but he's got to be able to defend takedowns. Takedown defense is everything against Islam Makhachev. He's certainly got the KO power to stand and strike with Islam. And Dustin Poirier has proven time and time again he had a blemish recently against Justin Gaethje. But other than that, I mean, the guy's been on fire. Beaten Conor McGregor twice. Had to fight Benoit Saint Denis after the Gaethje loss and ended up beating him. People didn't expect that to happen. But every time he faces a lower contender, he wins, and he deserves a title shot before he rides out into the sunset, which if he loses this fight, he'll probably do. But let's get into this big main event right now.
In the lightweight division for the lightweight division title, you're seeing this right at UFC 302. Islam Makhachev, 25-1. That's just ridiculous. Takes on the Diamond, Dustin Poirier, who gets another shot at the title. He comes in at 30-8. So let's get into it. Islam Makhachev stands 5'10". Dustin Poirier, 5'9". Now, in terms of activity, that goes to Dustin Poirier, 5.5 significant strikes, a 2.5 for Islam Makhachev. But the big question in this fight will be the takedown ability of Islam and the weak takedown defense of Dustin Poirier, who's shown that even when he gets taken down, he can still get submissions. But he's got a 63% takedown defense, lands like one takedown every 3 rounds. Islam Makhachev, on the other hand, lands more than one takedown per round. He's got a 90% takedown defense. So that's going to be the big storyline in this one. Islam Makhachev is on a tremendous run. Hasn't lost in a long time. Coming off the win over Volkanovski in the rematch by KO. It didn't take long. In round 1, he ended up leading 24-4 in significant strikes. Now, how did the Diamond get here? He lost to Justin Gaethje, who fell to Max Holloway at UFC 300. So that's opened a door for Poirier to get the title shot because he came back and beat Benoit Saint Denis, a fighter that a lot of people didn't think he would beat. But he ended up dominating him in that fight and getting the KO. In the second round, he trailed 50-28 in significant strikes, but found a way to win. And see, that's the Diamond's MO, right? It may not look good, but he may get taken down 4 times, but he'll find a way to submit you. He always finds a way to win. But the tough part is Islam Makhachev is not going to make that easy. It's not going to be easy and highly unlikely that he's going to go in there and reverse position on Islam Makhachev to get the victory. So I say Islam Makhachev retains the belt. It's going to be a great fight, but eventually Makhachev takes him down and controls him on the ground. But DP will fight off submission after submission in this one. It will be a battle. Dustin will have some chances here, but Islam's just going to grind out a victory to retain the belt and move to 26-1. Lightweight division for the title at UFC 302.
Yeah, so as much as I like Dustin Poirier, I got to be real with you because Islam Makhachev is top 5 on the dude list. That means I put him up against anybody in the lightweight division. And maybe the welterweight division too, for that matter. That will be a tough, a tall order, especially against a guy like Leon Edwards. I think he'd have a better chance against Bilal, which might be the reason why they're training Bilal. They want to see him beat Leon. I don't know. I'm speculating. But the bottom line is this is an intriguing matchup. It's one that if Dustin Poirier wins is going to be a lot like the Max Holloway fight, because right now we view Islam as being ridiculously good, especially when he beat Charles Oliveira, 2 guys that had like 10 or 11 fight win streaks coming into the fight, and he took him down, took him apart. No one else could do it. And now he's like the king of the hill. So, and it will remain that way until he loses. And that will be a shock when he does lose the belt. If that ever happens. We'll see. But listen, man, it's been a great show. I'm looking forward to UFC 302. It's on the horizon. It's coming. But for now, this is your boy Chris Cross. Hope you have a great day. And God bless, as always. Peace.